Open up the Bibles in Genesis chapter 24. Genesis 24. Last time we got together, we talked about Isaac. They were looking for a wife for Isaac. Back then, marriages were arranged. How would you like to live through that? They say that actually arranged marriages, there's less divorce in arranged marriages than there are in marriages where we pick for ourselves. Maybe it's because the parents look a little deeper and they see things that we don't see when we're in love. That's what?
Fear or family rejecting you to do.
That's true. Yep. But that's true. The statistics show that marriages work better when they're an arranged marriage. So anyway, that's the case here. And we know that the senior servant of Abraham, he called him into him and he said, I want you to take an oath. In summary, he wanted to put his hand under Abraham's thigh as signifying this oath that he would go to Abraham's people and bring a wife back for Isaac. He said, whatever you do, do not take a wife from the Canaanites for Isaac. Why do you think that was? Why do you think he didn't want a daughter of the Canaanites to marry Isaac?
Mixed religion.
The different religions?
Beliefs.
Yeah. And what would be the problem there?
Well, you can't worship. You can't worship the others.
That's true.
Well, and in the Jewish faith, the faith follows the mother.
Yep. That's right. As a matter of fact, if you're considered a Jew, either if your mother was a Jew, you're considered a Jew. Not your father, your mother. Also, if you're not a Jew, you can become a Jew by going through all the stuff they go through. And that's kind of a hard thing to do, really, they say. I wouldn't know. But really, they look at the mother and not the father. And I always thought that was kind of interesting that it comes down through the mother. So anyway, he tells, and if you think it was probably, the servant was probably Eliezer of Damascus that we saw back in Genesis chapter 15 when Abraham went to God. He said, God, I don't have anybody to will all my things to. He said, I don't have a son. He said, I'm going to give it to my servant Eliezer of Damascus because I don't have a son. And God says, no, you're not. I'm going to give you a son. So years and years later, when Abraham was 100 years old, they have a baby. So anyway, neat story about that. This was the start of what they call miscegenation. Anybody heard that word? Miscegenation, where you cannot marry outside of certain limits. Used to be in this country until 1967 that you could, a white and a black could not marry. That was the law. And they had I think it was Loving versus Virginia was the Supreme Court case. They finally allowed whites and blacks to marry. That was 1967. That's not that long ago, is it? I mean, I was 7 years old, wasn't even 10. So things have changed a lot in this country. Another thing about the Jewish race, I want to talk to you about that a little bit tonight. This is probably going to blow your socks off. You've probably never heard this before. But how many of you know that the Jewish race did not start with Abraham? We've always been told that, haven't we? That the Jewish race started with him. It actually didn't. The Jewish race,
The Psalm, Father Abraham.
Father Abraham, he is considered the father of the Jews. But he's also considered the father of the Christians and the father of the Arabs, right? The Muslims. But Judaism started from the tribe of Judah. The people that came out of the tribe of Judah, and also Benjamin, which the tribes of Judah and Benjamin joined together. After Solomon, Israel broke into two countries, Israel and Judah. Judah was the southern kingdom. Israel was the northern kingdom. Israel was the wicked one. The southern kingdom, they followed after David. But it was the people from the tribe of Judah and from Benjamin in Judah, the country, that were considered Jews. And at no time did those other 10 tribes ever say they were Jews. They didn't relate to that. Matter of fact, when we talk about the lost tribes of Israel, how many of you ever heard that? The lost 10 tribes of Israel, they never were really lost. Israel was taken captive several hundred years before Christ came, and they were taken to Assyria. Well, a lot of Judah was left. And if you read Jeremiah and Daniel, Jeremiah was among the group that was left in Judah, and he prophesied from that angle. Daniel was taken with all the guys, all the young people, and all the people to Assyria. Well, they never were lost, they just were dispersed. That's a better way to say it, the 10 tribes. But they never, ever were called Jews. And they think that they have a pretty good record where they went after Assyria. And a lot of them went to Western Europe, a lot of them went to the British Isles, and a lot of those people came over here. So a lot of the people here are the blood of Abraham, the true blood of Abraham. Do a search sometime on the internet, it's really interesting. They actually did, the Mormons have a story in the Book of Mormon that says that there were these godly people in Israel, and they were looking to get away from all this persecution stuff, so they got these little tubes. I guess they're like 6 foot around, 7 foot around. They had a plug in the top and a plug in the bottom. And so they got in the ocean, and God made the currents float them over here to the Americas. They landed in Central America. Now, this is Mormon, the Book of Mormon says that, okay? And I guess whichever side was up, they'd pop that cork out, and they'd have some light and some air because of that. When it rolled this way, they'd plug that one and open the other one. Well, they came over here, and they supposedly, over the centuries, they spread out and reproduced up through South America and North America. Well, then they go on that there was this great battle between the Lamanites and the Nephites, and it goes into this stuff. And the people that were dark-skinned were evil, and their skin was turned dark because the Book of Mormon says that, not me, okay? And they had this big battle, and the dark-skinned people won. So when the British and all came over here, and they saw these Indians here, they were what was left over from these tribes that had killed all the white people. Well, about 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, a couple of geneticists did some studies on DNA. And you know what? DNA doesn't lie, right? You know, DNA, and it's so deep. I mean, I've studied some of it, but it goes a lot deeper than I want to even study. But they've proven that the American Indians, all the tribes, all of them came through the land bridge in the Bering Strait, not from Israel. So they basically disproved the Book of Mormon. Well, this one guy was in Australia that did that, and another one at the University of Oregon. I talked to the guy at the University of Oregon with a few emails, and the Mormons' response to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was to excommunicate them. They didn't argue with them. They didn't say, we don't agree with you. They just said, we're kicking you out of the church. Well, the guy in Oregon, he said that he still believed that the Mormon faith was real. He still considered himself a Mormon. He just didn't believe the Book of Mormon anymore. So, we've got another problem. Back in 2012, a study was, to get to my notes over here, I'm kind of getting way ahead of myself, but you'd find this interesting. In 2012, a study was done in Israel of the Jews, and they did a bunch of DNA tests there in Israel of the Jews. They did DNA tests of Jews all over the world that claimed to be original Jews. I've told you before about the Khazar Jews. There was a group of people in the Caucasus, which is eastern Russia. You've heard of the Caucasus Mountains? Well, there's Kazakhstan and Georgia, two of the big countries now. In that area, back about 800 AD, after Christ, 800 years after Christ, these people there decided all of a sudden, hey, we want to be Jews. So they started calling themselves Jews, and in the 8th century, they migrated down in that area around Israel, and then when Israel became a nation again in 48, they're the main ones that went there, the Russian Jews. Well, they're the Khazars. So this Jewish guy, this just geneticist, did studies of DNA, and hardly any of those guys, their blood traces back to Abraham. And I don't know how they know you, but I posted a link on my notes here on the web where you can go and read that whole study. But they said the Palestinians are closer to the blood of Abraham than the Jews are. Isn't that amazing? Let me read you a couple scriptures in Revelation, and I'll read you a couple other notes about that. Revelation 2:9 says, I know thy works. Here Jesus is talking to the churches of Asia. He says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So here you have people, it says in Genesis, or Revelation, saying we're Jews, and they're really not. Revelation 3:9, Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. 3:9 says, Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. So, isn't that incredible that these people in Israel calling themselves Jews don't trace back to Abraham, or trace back actually to the tribe of Judah? Now let me read you an article I found on the internet about that. Tex Marks, he's an evangelist, he wrote, Who should possess the land of Israel? Christian evangelicals, which is us, say it should be the descendants of Abraham. They point to the Old Testament and claim that God gave this land forever to the descendants of Abraham, and that God demands they and they alone own the land. To the Christian evangelical, this means the Jews. Yes, it is the Jews who own this land, and it is their land forever. The Jews then, according to Christian evangelicals, are the descendants of Abraham, his seed. There is only one problem, and it is a huge one. Science proves those who call themselves Jews are not Jews. DNA science has confounded the Christian evangelicals by proving conclusively that most of the people in the nation of Israel and in the world Jewry are not the descendants of Abraham. Those living today who profess to be Jews are not of the ancient Israelites, and they are not the seed of Abraham. In fact, the new DNA research shows that the Palestinians actually have more Israelite blood than do the Jews. The nation of Israel today is populated with 7.5 million imposters. Interesting, isn't it? And that's just the first part of his article. So, let me ask you this. You know, we've been told as Christians that we have to support Israel pretty much no matter what. Because the Bible, God told Abraham, said, whoever blesses you, I will bless. Whoever curses you, I will curse. Looking at this evidence, how do you feel toward Israel? Should we support everything they do? I don't know, I'm asking.
Are they Israel?
Well, this DNA says they're not.
But how would we know that? 100 years ago, we didn't have DNA.
Right.
You go by where they're located from.
Yeah, right.
All these generations that we're on, I don't know.
Well, what's
Well,
that?
And those
there have
people-
been I'll tell you what there are. There have been two theories all along. The Rhineland hypothesis that talks about how Abraham and his people came from where it talks about all this other people in the area. But also the Khazarian hypothesis, which is the Khazar Jews. I remember reading about this about probably 5 years ago. It's the first time I read about the Khazars. And I thought, well, that's interesting. People just all of a sudden say, hey, I'm a Jew. I'm one of those people. Well, anybody could say that, couldn't they? So, it's really interesting to me. You know, DNA evidence is hard to beat.
They call themselves Jews, and they've been living there and living that way, so how can you say they're not? Because you can become a Jew.
Right.
If you
They are Jews, right. But they're saying they're not related to Abraham, is what they're saying.
Have they done the process of changing, becoming a Jew? It is a hard
Well, I'm
process.
sure they have. Yeah, I'm sure they have.
100 years ago, I wonder?
Yeah, and they don't know that their DNA isn't right.
No,
You know,
But
Somewhere they do.
my
That's the
question
same
is,
as Washington Cross at Delaware. Nobody saw it, but we've all seen the paint, so we believe it.
Yeah.
Well, nobody saw those blood tests, the DNA tests, but it was on the internet. We've seen it, heard it, and then we heard you, and you're credible, so we believe it.
Well, I'm just saying, you got to make up your own mind. I
The
don't know.
question was, do you support Israel?
But I think it is. What you get, Chris?
Yes.
my question is, what is the benefit to the people who are the imposters, except that in historical, references, they are constantly being persecuted. So if they're wanting to be a part of that faith, which they know they're being persecuted,
Kind of stupid, isn't it?
there must be a reason why they're wanting to be Jewish and knowing that it's going to cause all this. So should we be condemning them because they want to be that faith? I'm
no,
not sure.
no.
And why should we not support them if they're there and they're in Israel and they're claiming to be Jewish and they are living Jewish, then they should, I think, I would still support them.
Sure.
And it says in the Bible that God looks at the heart.
Right. Well,
So if they are observant Jews, then God would still want us to support them.
well, the Bible tells us that those that have accepted Christ are the seed of Abraham.
Right.
That's what it all comes down to, And you can't. Even if you tested by the a lot of Christian faiths believe that the people in this country are the seed of Abraham. And like I say, they have a strong case. People migrating to Western Europe, to the British Isles, and then coming over here, when all the people came here from the British Isles. So who knows, But that's a strong case. Like I say, you can look at the link and go and read the report the guy did, and it tells how many people are tested, all that stuff. And like I say, it disproved the Book of Mormon, and I don't know what difference it makes. You said that God's blessings are on those that are seed of Abraham, and that's everybody that believes in Christ, which that's awesome, I think. So, anyway, it's just something different that we've never heard before. And that we just always have accepted these people in Israel as being the true people of God, and that's not always the case. So, and it's funny to find these two scriptures in Revelation that talks about them being imposters. So it very well could be. But anyway, it's something if you really want to do some research on it, it's pretty cool to look at. I just like stuff like that, you know. And anyway, like I say, you gotta look at it, see what God's word says, go from there.
Jay, you're so tough on my stereotype beliefs.
I don't mean to be.
No, I enjoy it.
Another thing I want to talk about, we live in a PC world, don't we? Politically correct?
Changing the subject, are you?
Yes, I am, just a little. This may be more controversial.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I said, you know what, we all love each other here, don't we? And there's things in the Bible, like, ever since I've taught this class, I've expressed this, I've just stressed this saying that in the essentials, unity. In the non-essentials, liberty. There's some things that we have to believe together to be able to worship together. The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We've got to believe that to be brothers and sisters in Christ. We've got to believe the virgin birth. There's certain things, but there are a lot of things that we can differ on in our belief, and we're still brothers and sisters in Christ, right? A lot of people's ideas have changed over the years. Like I said, until 1967, a black and a white could not marry in this country. Slavery went until, what, 1865, 1864, and it was abolished. Only in parts of the country that were held by the South, not in parts of the North. The North had slavery too, didn't they? They had given it up by the time because they didn't need it, because they didn't have the crops, the big industry like the South did. I never tell you that slavery is right. I don't believe that with all my heart. I don't think anybody should ever be a slave. But the Bible does not condemn slavery. Matter of fact, anybody heard Reverend Manning from Harlem? His ministry is called ATLAH, A-T-L-A-H. A-T-L-A-H. You ought to look him up on YouTube sometime. He's a black minister out of Harlem. I love this guy. He was given a vision, I think in the early 90s or late 80s, to go to Harlem and start teaching the black people the Word of God there and to see that God raised them up. He's got people in his church now that are bankers, that are lawyers, that are Wall Street guys, and God is blessing their socks off. But I tell you what, he is hard on the black people. I mean, he says stuff that I wouldn't dare say as a white man. I mean, really, he blasts them. And I watched a video yesterday, he says, you black people are more racist than anybody in the world. And he blasted Obama. He said, if it wouldn't have been for him, he said, Obama's done more to damage race relations in this country than anybody else. And you know, I've always said, this country needed a black president. There could have been so many good things come from a black president in this country. He could have drawn us together as a country, but it didn't happen. And it's not happening, which is sad. We still have to pray for him, believe God will do some things with him, but it could have been, and it still could be such a great thing. I think so many great black men out there, and I've prayed for years that God will raise up black people to lead young black men out of what they're going through. You know, and same with young white redneck guys, you know. God needs to raise up heroes in the white men, raise them up and take them out of the junk they're into. So anyway, talking about mixed race marriages. I don't know how you feel about that. It used to be something the Christian faith didn't accept, but it's pretty much accepted now. Like I say, 1967, a lot has changed since then. Also, our government has accepted homosexual marriages now, which I think the Bible's very clear on that. The Bible's not so clear, I don't believe, on interracial marriage. Other than some of the scriptures they use for that are in Genesis. God talks about what it says in Genesis 1:11, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. Genesis 1:24-25 says, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. That term, according to their kinds, or according to his kind, is used no less than 28 times in the Bible. And if you look at nature, if we take birds, for example, cardinals reproduce cardinals, right? Blue jays recreate blue jays. There's never a mix. The only time you ever have a mix is when man gets involved, like a mule. And what's a mule? It's a hybrid, isn't it, of a horse and a donkey. That doesn't happen in real life. If you put horses and donkeys in a field, the donkeys hang out on one side, the horses hang out on the other. It's funny, they don't hang out together. So I'm not saying either way is right or wrong. That's something you got to figure out on your own. And you know what? If two people walk in here of a mixed marriage, I'm not going to treat them any different than anybody else. I'm going to love them just like I love anybody. That's something between them guys. I don't think it's such a big deal, but you know, it used to be a big deal in this country. And that's what we're talking about. It still can be a big deal.
What's that? Definitely progressive society.
Yeah, well, you know what, there are blacks that don't believe blacks should marry whites. There are whites that don't believe blacks should marry blacks.
Italians should marry.
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
It goes everywhere.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they're racist. It really doesn't mean they're racist, it just means they believe that they're racistly pure. And
Japanese are the worst of all of them.
are they the Asians?
Yeah, you know, Japanese.
And so I really don't know many Asians. So I didn't grow up around blacks at all. There were none where I live, and I think there's one lives in my little hometown now, but I grew up around a lot of Hispanics. And you know what, we didn't look at color. I mean, to this day, we're still like family. That's Barb, you know, we go to our high school reunions, and we're just like family. You know, and Facebook, I love those guys. It doesn't matter what color their skin is, and some intermarry. I don't have a problem with that, but some people do. Like I say, still some people do. Well, what does the Bible say? That's something you've got to figure out on your own. And you know what? You're not going to change what happens anyway, right? So we have to love people for who they are and not what they do and things like that. Same with homosexuals. You know, I want homosexuals in the church. I don't want them sitting under the Word of God, as long as they're not causing trouble and trying to spread what they're doing. But they need to sit under the Word of God. They need to know what God's Word says and know that we love them. And God's the one that does all the judging, not us. So, a lot of people think that Moses married a black woman. It says in Numbers 12:1, it says, and Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. Well, if you look at that, when it says Ethiopian, the word used in Hebrew is Cush. Cush was one of the grandsons of Abraham. And actually there was a Cush. Actually, when you read Ethiopia, the Bible usually is talking about that part of Africa. But there was also a Cush that was in what's present-day Iraq and all the way down to India. And a lot of people moved there. Well, if you read on about this wife, that everybody just assumes this wife was black because it says she was from Cush or from Ethiopia. Well, if you read on, you see that she was a Midianite. Well, who was Midian? Midian was one of the sons of Abraham through his second wife, Keturah. So she was in the family of Abraham. And she wasn't black. She was the same color Abraham was. She was related to him through his son, Midian. Moses, through Abraham's son, Midian. What happens is, when I first met Barbara was born in Tanganyika, which is present-day Tanzania. So I call Barbara my African queen. Well, anyway, she's African. And I would tell my friends, I'd say, you know what, my fiance's African, and in Utah especially, they'd be like, oh, and you see their eyes rolling. And then when I show them a picture, they look and say, I thought you said she's black. I said, she's African. See how our stereotypes? There are a lot of white people in Africa. You take it Northern Africa, South Africa, there's a lot of white people in Africa. So we just assume, without really looking into things, what color they are. Well, Moses' wife was a Midianite. She was the same color as Abraham, which we believe was white. If you read David, the Bible says David had a ruddy complexion. You know, when I first read that, my first reaction was, man, he must have had pock marks all over his face and pimples. And I'm thinking ruddy. But you know what ruddy really means? It means redheaded, freckled. King David was a redhead. And he had freckles and that kind of stuff. Isn't that crazy? I saw a portrait one time of Jesus. He had red hair. And it was one of the neatest portraits of Jesus I've ever seen. So, anyway, I mean, we always thought he was probably brown. Well, really, who knows? And it doesn't matter anyway, does it? Anybody ever seen the show on History Channel called The Face of Jesus? Incredible. Yeah, they play them over and over and over. So if you get a chance to watch that, they actually take some way and they try to reconstruct what his face would look like. And they take the Shroud of Turin. Shroud of Turin. And they say the Shroud of Turin is not really an image that's left there. It's more like a DNA or like some kind of print. And they take that and they put it in a 3D scanner and stuff, and they come out with the actual face of Jesus Christ. I mean, it gave me chills when I saw it. It was amazing. I guarantee it'll be back on. They play those things till they're worn out. Anyway, good movie. So let me go on here. I've got about 50 pages of notes here. Like I say, if you want to go on the website, I'll put it up here in a little bit. There's a lot of things I don't talk about each week that are on my notes that you could actually, if you want to study more, like there's more of those articles and talk about interracial marriage, that kind of thing. Okay, let's go to,
Yes, 24, 24.
Yeah, go to 24, let's go to verse 7. Now remember, Abraham had 2 wives. He had Sarah, and she passed away, and he married Keturah. And he also had concubines. What was a concubine? She was more like a mistress. She didn't have the authority that the other wives had, but they had children through them. Abraham had as many as 8 children. He had Ishmael and Isaac, and he had 6 other sons through Keturah. So she was his concubine until he married her and made her a full-fledged wife. All of the patriarchs, almost all the patriarchs in the Old Testament that served the Lord stuff had polygamous marriages. Now, polygamy is not a sin, but I don't believe it's God's best either. I believe,
It's not smart.
it's not smart. It's like I tell people when I moved to Utah, all my friends would say, how many wives are you going to take? Well, when I got up there, I figured out the best thing to do is find one woman with 4 different personalities. You get the same benefits, but it's a lot cheaper. So,
I like that.
and that's not Barbara. Just 6.
Where you going with this, Jay?
Actually, if you go to Ogden, Utah, yeah, really, walking in the rain. You go to Ogden, Utah, they have a beautiful cemetery there, and they have these tombstones, and they have spires on them that go up, and these guys had like 8 wives, and so they have 2 wives on each side of the spire. It's the most crazy thing you've ever seen. You go out there and read, here lies Joe Smo, and here's Elizabeth, here's Mary Ann, all these wives they had. Now, how in the world you could honestly get it?
The honey-do list, I got.
I don't get it.
Everything away from it.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. You know what? If I was a woman, I wouldn't want to share a guy. Come on, man. It's crazy. But all of our patriarchs did that. They all had multiple wives. King David had multiple wives. So, they say the Mormons will tell you, well, the reason we did that is because so many Mormons coming out to Utah, the men would die. And they did. A lot of people push these hand carts. We don't know much about Mormon history up there. You hear it all the time. But a lot of people traveled with these push carts. They'd take everything they had, put it on this little cart, and they would push that thing for hundreds of miles out to Utah. People died all along the way. They just buried them right there. It's amazing what they went through to get out there. And they talk about how they were being persecuted. Well, they were being persecuted because of the things they were doing. They were doing things they shouldn't have done to people, and they were being persecuted. So they finally went out there to get away from everybody, which was a good thing. But a lot of people, if they were rich, they had wagons, but most of them pushed those hand carts. And they got there late in the season, and they had some seeds and stuff, and they about starved to death the first year because they didn't have time to really get a good crop in. It's just an amazing story. Another story about the Mormons, and I guess this is true, they had planted their crops. It was that first year they were there, and these seagulls, there's seagulls everywhere in Utah. And they live out in the Great Salt Lake. They're Pacific Ocean seagulls. They're big things. Well, they had a cricket attack or a swarm that came in and was eating all their crops. And so they were out there trying to burn things and trying to kill these crickets. And they were going to starve to death if they didn't kill these crickets. And I guess, none of us have ever seen a swarm like that. You hear stories and read stories where they're like smoke. They're just so thick coming in. And I've seen what they call Mormon crickets. They're about the biggest, gnarliest, ugliest things you've ever seen in your life. A friend of mine, he was a drunk, but he used to sit out in the desert getting drunk and shooting them with 22. They're that big, they're just nasty looking. But they were praying, God help us, deliver us from this swarm of crickets. And all of a sudden, all these seagulls came out, and they would eat until they were stuffed, and they'd fly off and throw up those crickets, and they'd come back and eat more. To this day, the seagull is a state bird in Utah. And if you go down to the Mormon temple, they have a big statue there with a seagull on top. It's interesting. So I guess it really did happen. I don't know. Interesting, though. Anyway, verse 7. Let's go back to verse 5. We'll start there. Genesis 24:5. It says, Abraham gave everything he owned to his son Isaac. But before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them off to a land in the east away from Isaac. If you read about Abraham, it talks about Ishmael and Isaac. He loved his kids. He really did love his kids.
Are you in the right spot?
Yeah.
Am I on 25? Yeah, I go to 25, I guess. I'm sorry.
Chapter?
25?
Wait.
I'm trying to find my place here. I can't
Chapter
remember.
25?
Yes,
25.
25.
Sorry about that. I went back up. Okay. Yeah, that helps. That's different. Abraham gave everything he owned to his son Isaac, but before he died, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines. Like I said, 6 other sons. And he sent them off to a land in the east away from Isaac. You see, the land of Canaan had been promised to him through Isaac, not those other sons. Remember Ishmael, he loved him, but God says, no, you've got to send him away. And there was a problem between Hagar, Ishmael's mother, and Sarah. They both were just at each other's throats all the time. And God said, send him away. Isaac is the promised son. Everything's coming through him. So here Abraham sends those sons away, but he gives them gifts. He loved those guys. And verse 7 says, Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, having lived a long and satisfying life. He breathed his last and joined his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites, and where he buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Beer Lahai Roi in the Negev. Apparently Ishmael and Isaac were close to each other even after this, because it said they buried Abraham together.
They had to be communicating.
Yeah, so they had to be communicating and know what each other were doing. So apparently they got along together. I thought that was kind of interesting as studying that. You would think that they'd probably never see each other again, but apparently they did. And we were talking about Midian a while ago. Midian, like I said, was the son of Abraham and Keturah, and he was the father of people who became one of Israel's greatest enemies. Remember when Gideon says he was hiding behind the wheat thresher and all that, trying to thresh out his wheat so nobody would find him, because these Midianites would come into Israel and they would just destroy everything. They'd eat all the food. They'd just leave everybody starving to death. Well, these were the Midianites. These were the sons of Abraham through Keturah and his people. These people became one of Israel's greatest enemies. This right here, this commentary says, Midian was the most prominent of Abraham's second family. He and his people are mentioned 67 times by name. He was defeated by Esau. Anybody remember who Esau was? He was Isaac's grandson, Jacob's twin brother. Moses fled to his land and married a woman of Midian. Midianites became a snare to Israel, for which God commanded Israel to war with them. For many centuries, off and on, Israel fought with them. Midian was the nation defeated by Gideon with such great destruction that his downfall is referred to as the day of Midian. Remember the story of Gideon, how they all put their light under a little cover, and they pulled that off, and they started banging these things, and they said, in the name of the Lord, and the sword of, and the Gideon's sword, or something like that, and they went down, and God really killed all of them. They killed themselves. The Israelites didn't have to do anything. So anyway, we're going to stop right there and go on from there next week. Anybody have any questions about some of the stuff we talked about? And please believe me, I'm not racist. Please believe me that. You know, I don't know how you believe as far as interracial marriage stuff, but you know, I have friends that are interracially married. I love them. I love their kids. One of my best friends came from Mozambique. Met him in seminary. Matter of fact, I'll tell you his story real quick. He was a drug addict, and he was shooting up and stuff in Mozambique. He was no problem to the government. They were having a civil war at that time. I went to school in 84 to 86, and where I met him was there at school. He and two other single guys lived next door to us. Well, anyway, he'd been a drug addict. Well, he came to know the Lord Jesus Christ, and God changed his life completely. He was on fire for the Lord. The Lord called him to preach the gospel. Well, as he began to do that, guess what? The government wanted to kill him. They didn't want him out there doing that. He was no trouble when he was a drug addict, but when he came to know Jesus, they wanted to kill him. So he had prayed about it, and he knew to live, he was going to have to get out of Mozambique. So there's a country called Swaziland between Mozambique and South Africa. And he thought, if I can just get into Swaziland, they're run by a king, but they're a Christian country. And he said, I know I can live if I can get there. So he said he went to the border, and here's all these barbed wire fences and machine gun nests up there. And he said, they'll shoot you if you try to get out of the country. Well, he said he prayed, and all of a sudden God brought this rainstorm. He said you couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. He crawled under the fence, went into Swaziland, got political asylum, stayed there a couple of years, and then he got an asylum to come over here, and that's when I met him. And what's funny, he was as black can be, and one of my best friends in the world, but he always thought he was white. So he says, I don't want to date black girls. I feel like I'm white. It's like that girl in Spokane, Washington, those racially, whatever, transracial, I think she told her. Somebody said, I wish she was still back, and she made me feel better about my mental well-being. That's pretty good. But anyway, he came over here, he married a really nice girl, black girl, and they have some wonderful kids. Their oldest son just graduated from one of the big universities in California with a music degree, and he's playing concert piano all over the country. And anyway, God does amazing things, doesn't he? God's amazing. So, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're white, you're brown, if you're yellow. If you love Jesus, you're my brother, you're my sister. That's what matters. So anyway, glad to have y'all here tonight. Anybody have any questions about all that? About the Jews? I challenge you to study some of that, read about that, about the Khazars and that kind of stuff. It's really Khazars, how you spell it. Okay. One of my nephews just spent some time in Kazakhstan in the service over there, fueling jets and Air Force. He just got back